It's ultimately official. The reveal is here. Onyx just announced their big announcement for July 1st, which is how now there's something called Onyx Mesh, which is now live. Keep in mind, they call this a new era. And not only that, they even describe this as being built on the Onyx Layer 1 in collaboration with something called Chain. Now, I'll explain this to the best of my capabilities, and there's a lot to unpack here, but I first want to clarify, nothing I say is financial advice. I am not telling anyone to do anything, and this is just my personal opinion and perspective. So let's just take a look at this, right? Onyx Mesh, what is this? Now, supposedly, what this is that it's this banking network that sits on top of the Onyx Layer 1. What this basically does is that, in simple terms, it lets banks and institutions run permission, or should I say controlled systems, while still using the security and the decentralized nature, basically, of the Onyx Layer 1 blockchain. Not only that, the amazing thing about this is this. So this kind of creates a somewhat hybrid system, in my opinion. The reason why is because if we take a look at it, customer data and stuff like that, it stays off-chain. So it's not on the blockchain, right? It stays with the institution. But then on the flip side, the mesh layer, so to speak, it handles ordering, something like verification of events and stuff like that, but in a more decentralized way. So this does fix a common issue. Let me explain why. Because a lot of businesses out there, a lot of enterprises out there, I see in some cases they're a fan of blockchain technology, but also at the same time, a lot of them feel a little bit hesitant. The reason why is because blockchain technology, people would like to say, oh, it's very arguably decentralized. What happens is that in a lot of cases, they just don't want everything to just be out there because, of course, a lot of their customers, a lot of their consumers of what they do don't typically want all of their information out there, which makes sense. Why would they want that, right? So Onyx Mesh kind of gives this solution for projects out there that are more so focused on global trade finance or institutions or enterprises, I should say, and gives them a solution that says, hey, you know what? There is this way to still utilize blockchain technology, but then not actually have all of the information out there, basically, because again, it's kind of a hybrid system in a sense where all of the customer data and stuff like that, it stays with the institution, whereas other aspects out there that don't really need that level of, I guess, privacy, it could be done through Onyx's Layer 1. So it just creates this environment where it fixes that common sort of issue where, okay, we like it, but then it's not too private. But again, this kind of fixes it because there is that hybrid system, so to speak. Now, a lot of people out there like to tell me, oh, this is not a big deal. It's not even anything that impressive. But if I just take a look at it, logically speaking, it is pretty impressive considering what issue it's trying to solve. That's the way you take a look at it. It's not flashy. Initially I thought maybe this could have been a hypothetical announcement like what they're hyping up July 1st to be. I thought it could maybe become an announcement of a Ripple partnership or a Stellar partnership or something like that. But it clearly isn't, as of right now at least. But you know what? I think this is pretty impressive too. I get it, a Ripple or Stellar partnership would have seemed a lot cooler and flashier, which I agree with, by the way, but this right here actually helps Onyx for the long term. So I think if anything, for a short-term or medium-term basis, of course, a Stellar or Ripple partnership, it's just miles better than this, right? In terms of the magnitude, in terms of kind of the attention that it could bring. But in terms of the long term, like in terms of multiple years to come, this is just much more wise, in my opinion. This is just a much better decision, I think, especially when it comes to the fundamental side of things. Now, also keep in mind, though, why is Onyx Mesh being built, basically? Why is that a big deal? Well, it's because let's take this into consideration. Onyx is literally used for gas fees on the Layer 1 blockchain. So what this means is that this, in theory, increases the utility when it comes to Onyx. Because imagine if Onyx Mesh gains a lot of traction for whatever reason, it inherently is going to help Onyx's, I guess, tokenomics. The reason why I say that is because 10% of gas fees on Goliath, they're literally burned. So they're removed like that. So I don't think this is a bad thing at all. I get it. People like to say, oh, Onyx Mesh, it's a little bit lackluster. It wasn't such a big announcement. Okay, maybe in the short term, but I think when I take a look at it deeper, fundamentally, it tells entirely just, I think, a different story, because When I just take a look at Onyx Mesh, it just launched and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. I could easily react that way. But I want to look into it a little bit deeper. I want to take a look at, okay, how is this going to impact Onyx moving forward? And if I just take a look at it purely, just from an impact standpoint of view, fundamentally speaking, I think this could matter a lot. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but in terms of the fundamentals, in terms of launching Onyx Mesh, I think it could have a great impact for Onyx moving forward. And I think clearly we're seeing a little bit of that in terms of the price charts. Did you know that Onyx has been having a 4% recovery approximately in the past 24 hours? It could be different by the time I upload this video, but I'm just saying. I just find that a little bit surprising, or should I say not too surprising, because I think some people out there are understanding just the magnitude of something like that, right? Again, the launch of Onyx Mesh. So I don't think it's a bad thing overall. Now, I mentioned before, right? This is built in collaboration with Chain in terms of Onyx Mesh. Let me just give a little bit of a history lesson when it comes to this, to the best of my capabilities in quite simple terms. Because if we take a look at the history of Onyx, what happened? Chain, it rebranded to Onyx, right? So there was a rebrand and then it became Onyx. Now here's the thing. Chain as an entity though, it's still part of the Onyx ecosystem, but also on top of that, Chain in and of itself recently achieved, or should I say not that long ago, it achieved something called fully upgrading to ISO 20022. So again, Chain does have a lot of, I would arguably say maybe historical sort of ties when it comes to Onyx, which kind of makes sense considering I think what I said before. But at the same time as well, people like to say this is a little bit lackluster because Chain, so what? They built something in collaboration with Onyx. Who cares? But the thing is, it still doesn't change the fact that Onyx Mesh, at least to me, I'm not saying on anyone's behalf, but at least to me, it seems like it's a pretty big accomplishment in the case of Onyx, at least in terms of its longevity. Not to mention as well, something else that I noticed is that Onyx has lately, this is just from what I noticed, I mean, I haven't seen anything official yet, but just something from what I noticed, they haven't been referring to their layer 1 blockchain as Goliath as much anymore. So now it seems like they're referring to it as just Onyx's layer 1, which I think is a great move. If let's say they stick with that, we'll wait and see. And I think the reason why this is a smart move is because if we take a look at their layer 1 blockchain called Goliath initially, my thing with that is it sometimes does create confusion because some of my friends out there who are maybe not too into Onyx, like maybe they just casually take a look at it, when they see Goliath, sometimes they get a little bit confused because they wonder, okay, is it an entirely different project? What happens when it comes to this? Is Onyx entirely different? Again, sometimes people wonder that. So simplifying Goliath and instead just saying it as, the Onyx layer 1 blockchain, it just makes things a lot more simple. That's just what I noticed. But again, only time will tell, but I think if anything, if they stick with that, it's a genius move because it's just going to make things a lot more simple, in my opinion. And keep in mind, we're talking about a project here that is still around 6 times lower than its peak last year. I didn't see Onyx Mesh last year. That's the thing. We're around 6 times lower than that. And I don't think I even saw an altcoin season in 2025. Where was the altcoin season then? I didn't see it. And still, we're around 6 times lower than its peak in 2025. So that's just how low Onyx has gone down, which I get it seems like a bad thing, but the launch of Onyx Mesh, combined with the fact that we saw Onyx launch its mainnet of the layer 1 blockchain, which initially people referred to it as Goliath, but at least now a lot of people are referring it to as the layer 1 blockchain. So yeah, whatever the case is, we saw the mainnet of that launch this year, and then we saw Onyx Mesh recently. So really big things happen for Onyx fundamentally in 2026 that I didn't see in 2025. And I think, if anything, it showcases that Onyx became way lower in terms of the price charts, yet it became better. So how does that make sense, right? It became cheaper, yet it became better. How does that make sense? But you know what? In this space, that's sometimes how it works, I guess, especially during times when the market isn't doing the best. But if the market could reverse, if, that's the key word, right? If, this type of stuff usually does matter in a sense where people usually care about the fundamentals after the market has been doing pretty good, or when it's starting to, I should say. But the work has to be put in first, right? They can't just wait for the market to do good and then start doing stuff. They have to do it preemptively. So I think Onyx is just doing things in a much more logical way. In a sense where they're building right now, they're doing things right now, so then maybe it could matter later. But that's if the market could reverse. But if it could just even reverse to its peak last year, keep in mind, again, we're around 6 times lower than that. We're talking about a project here that has almost 150,000 holders. So it's not a small project by any means. I get it's not doing the best, but still top 150. It's ranked 144th as of right now in terms of market cap. However, I'd also like to mention this. Initially, some people, including me, thought that is Onyx going to be announcing something in regard to MICA, especially we consider how July 1st, that was the due date for a lot of service providers when it comes to the space to have MICA authorization to continue to serve European Union clients. But then some people would like to argue that, oh, Onyx is not an exchange. So yeah, that's kind of debatable, but besides that point, Onyx's closest competitor, which is called Zebic, that has an aspect of MICA. So if let's say they announce something in regard to MICA, wouldn't surprise me, but this is the only time will tell type of scenario. I'll keep everyone updated though when it comes to that. Keep in mind, the announcement may not just be this, because remember not too long ago, they said multiple announcements? So when it comes to Onyx Mesh, it could very well just be the first announcement we hear. Maybe there's a second, a third, who knows what it'll be, but only time will tell. But they did say there was going to be multiple announcements, so yeah, we'll wait and see. But I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward when it comes to Onyx. However, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a very amazing day.